Mm. That's some good water. Welcome to Caleb the Video Maker 2! It is me, Caleb, from Caleb the Video Maker 2. So, thank you for joining this live stream. I have some exciting news to share with you. This is my third live stream in a row. I'm still using my Potato Cam HD with my potato microphone, but that's okay. We'll get somewhere someday. The topic for today is going to be software testing. And I'm going to say up front, I am not a software tester. I mean, well, I do test software, but I'm not a testing engineer or anything like that. I'm just some noob on the YouTubes, so take all my advice as just the basics, right? But before we get started, I have some cool news, and I wanted to give a special thanks to my sponsor, which IBM, and specifically the product I am thinking that you guys are interested in is Db2, which is their database. So I am going to paste a link for you guys in the comments where you guys can go check that out and give that a try. And the reason I'm promoting this so much right now in these live streams is because I'm actually going to be coming out with a series over DB2. So the sooner you get started with it, the sooner that series is going to be of help. I mean, the series is going to come out the same time either way, but you can already be started. You can already get your feet wet a little bit. Oh, I always forget to change the title names for these things. Okay, what do we want to call it today? Let's go with software testing. Okay, I should probably fix that before I start live streaming. So we are up to 7 viewers, which is pretty sweet. I decided every time I reach a new high score on total viewers, I am going to shout for joy. So far my max is 16. So the goal for today is to get 17. Can we get 17? If we get 17, it's going to be quite exciting for me. Alright, so I saved the info. I don't know if that's going to update now or if that will save when it's done. I don't know. So I'm getting a little bit more into live streaming. I think the results of the previous 2 have been tremendous. It was a lot of fun. Like I did it for 2 hours yesterday, and I found it hard to stop doing it, and it was like midnight almost. So that is pretty awesome. But I am using a software to do this live streaming, and I found out some cool tricks, right? So in the previous videos, I wanted to show you guys some stuff on the screen, and I couldn't figure it out because, you know, I'm just a silly guy who doesn't know how to do anything. But I figured it out. Found a tutorial. Okay, check this out. Check it out. Are you ready? Boom. Black box. Oh, yeah. No black box. Black box. This may or may not have anything to do with black box testing, which we will be talking about in this video. And it actually has nothing to do with that. It's actually just a background where I am going to be putting important information like so. So you can see here I am sharing our sponsor, and I'm putting the link there so you guys can go get that. They are the ones who are making this content possible, so make sure you thank them, give their software a try. It's great because it is available for free as a developer, and you can do so many different things with it. So that is why I am very excited to be sponsored by them. I mean, of all sponsors, this is really great. So be sure to check that out. And there's one other thing. Check this out. You ready for this? Are you ready? Boom. Sharing a screen. You see that? Yeah. So now I can do on-screen tutorials, which is pretty awesome. Now I'm pretty sure with the compression on here, it's going to look pretty horrible until we, you know, set up a real studio. But until then, I think this will do. So I'm going to go over a few things I wanted to share with you. I see these live streams as a way that I can update you guys with new things that are happening. So to begin, let me show my screen. First off, this is our sponsor, IBM Db2, and you know, this is great because they're sharing my video, so by sharing their stuff, I'm in the end sharing my own stuff. But the cool part is that they have decided to invest money into the community. They could have just as easily spent that money on Google AdSense or something, but instead they decided to help a little noob like me making some silly tutorials, and as a result, they're saying, hey, we appreciate you, we appreciate your audience, we appreciate our customer base. They care about the person, not just the numbers. So that's why I'm appreciative. So I'm gonna have to practice a bit, switching back between the face and the screen, but eventually I will get it. But as I was saying, I really appreciate that because this is a lot different than just putting an ad on the internet. This is reaching out to the development community, showing a product that is of extreme use. It's a good product. So that is why I am totally for sponsorship. Whether your opinion on sponsorship is, oh, that's silly, you're trying to make money, you shouldn't try to make money, that's evil, or if it's like, oh, you should do tons of sponsors. If you're anywhere in between, you should really listen to what I have to say here, because sponsorship is actually a way to help creators and help companies get their name out. If IBM has a good product, they can use people like me as a means to share that product with the world. So I am obviously by no means against sponsorship, and in fact I put my sponsorship up kind of like a page on my website saying what I would look for in a potential sponsor, and it took about 6 months or so to get like a real sponsor. So I've been trying to do this for a while and I finally got one, so that is why I'm really excited. I have had some other sponsored work which I will be sharing with you in just a minute. So let's switch over to the screen. Boom. Okay, so this is Db2 Developer Edition. This is the one that you can use for free, and it's full featured. And you can see it supports, you know, JSON, XML, and all that good stuff. So there's also some other cool stuff you can read in here, and you can program to it with a bunch of different languages and yada yada yada. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. If you're interested, go check that out. But now I want to give you an update on what's going on with my channel. And by the way, if you click the link that is being displayed or in the live chat, it'll take you to this page. So it'll be an easy way for you to find it. So this is my channel here. So I'm up to almost 41,000 subscribers, which is incredible. Just in the last few days, I just wanted to share some of the content that I've been sharing on here. I'll go to my videos. Okay, this is all weird. Okay, there we go. So what I've been doing is, okay, that's kind of weird. It's like 3 behind, but whatever. That's the one we're on. Hey, it's myself. So I've been doing these database clustering videos on a regular basis. And these videos were sponsored by Several Nines, which they are also a great company who went out of their way to make sure that I knew what I was doing for this series, and that I knew that they were there to answer questions, and that their software was mainly designed to help developers and DBAs and all of that good stuff. So I am also a huge supporter of them, and I can actually paste a link to them if you guys are interested. But essentially what they are is they are a database management system. The main tool they sell is called a cluster control. And I think you can get started with free, so you can get started with it for free. So I'll give you a chance to try it out. And I am actually going over how to use that stuff in this series. So I just pasted the link in the live chat so you guys can go check that out. But this series is really, really good if you are completely new to database clustering, as I was, believe it or not. Most of my tutorials are, you know, basic SQL, SQL, database design, but database clustering was a little bit of a step up. So not only was this a great learning experience for me, I am able to share that learning experience with you guys and illustrate that in a simple enough way that you guys can understand what I'm talking about. So if you look though at these views, you can see that oh shoot, I didn't mean to do that. You can see that the views here on the live streams are very, very good. I'm honestly surprised. So you can see 222 on the database clustering number 2 and 466 on database clustering 1, which those are very good views, but just my live stream that I did 20 hours ago is already up to 300 views, which is incredible. Yeah, so the last thing I wanted to say is that you can also find some blogs on my website with some sexy pictures here that show illustrations, and I will be updating the blog's database clustering where you can find all that good stuff. But these still need pictures, as you can see. Pictures coming soon. Okay, so that's enough wasting your time with channel updates. I think in the future I'll probably try to move those later on after I talk about the stuff I wanted to talk about for the day. Okay, some guy said my beard is looking cool. Well, thank you. Okay, let's get on to software testing. Got a lot of information for you guys, so I'm excited to share. We talked a little bit about software testing yesterday because the topic for yesterday was computer science, and a huge piece of computer science is software testing, obviously. Because as a computer scientist, you got to make sure you are creating bug-free or as close to bug-free software as possible. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about that. It's kind of hard for me to switch back between my notes and the live dashboard, so I might not see your guys' comments till the end where I'll be answering some questions. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to notice if we do reach 17 viewers by chance. We did reach 14, but now we're down to 5, so I must be slacking. Okay, so let's talk about what is testing. Software testing is the process of making software not have bugs, making sure that it does what it's supposed to do, and also looking for bugs that we can fix. So a bug is just when something doesn't work the way it should work. So you type something in and it says error, SQL connection problem, blah, 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 which, by the way, you should never see errors that talk about the database. They should be very general, like, there was a problem, try again later. But, you know, you always see those errors where it just spits out all of the information on a public website. That's really bad. So there's really two types of software testing that I'm going to be talking about: manual testing and automated testing. So as a computer science programming dude, I am obviously interested in automated testing. Anything that we can automate as a programmer, we need to automate it. We should even be automating our automation and then automating that process as well. That's because automation saves time. It allows us to do our job of programming rather than software testing in a sense. We can program the tests, but we don't have to sit there, click 1,000 buttons, make sure everything's working. We can spend more time actually coding our software rather than going through and clicking buttons. So there is ups and downs of automated versus manual testing, but ultimately it'd probably be best to have a balance of both of them, both automated testing and manual testing. But probably more automated testing than manual testing. So as I talked to you guys about in the last live stream, if you guys saw, here's a little illustration I had. It's really stupid, but consider this a program and you're going this way. And you hit an if statement. One way goes one way and one way goes the other way. And the program continues to branch. So when your software branches a bunch, you have a bunch of different points that you have to test. Essentially every single endpoint needs tested. So on here there's 3 endpoints, 1, 2, and 3. So that would take 3 tests at least, and sometimes different branches can require more or less work. So it can get pretty complex because if you think of a complex software system, the ends of your software, meaning the ends of the branches, all the possible options of input and output, it can basically become an impossible task. So we have to limit ourselves a little bit sometimes because we have to make sure that we can test everything as good as possible. I am not sure, the live stream seems to be loading. I don't know if it's disconnected. Okay, let's try to reconnect this thing. Okay. I don't know if the internet just crashed. I think it's up again, so I apologize with that. I'm not sure what I was saying, but essentially, the bigger your program, exponentially more things you have to test. So to make it easier on us, we need to try to approach testing in a way that's going to prevent us from trying every single possibility of input. It's just not plausible. So one thing that a lot of people do is test the edge cases. And the edge cases are the inputs that are right before the limit and a little bit after the limit to make sure the proper response is given. So for example, if a method or function takes a positive number, like inserting money into your bank account, well, you should probably test what happens if you insert $1, what happens if you insert $0, and what happens if you insert -$1. Those are the edge cases. And also what happens if you test the maximum number and the number right after that. All of those possibilities should respond in a good way. So if you put in something invalid, the software should say something like, hey, that is an invalid input, please try again. So you're going to have to do data validation for each one of those edge cases. So you can base your tests that you write in software off of these edge cases, and it'll give you a pretty good idea that your software is working correctly. Obviously, it can't do it perfect because of the complexity of the whole system, but there is some ways to get essentially bug-free software, which I'm going to be talking about later in this podcast or live stream or whatever you want to call it. And that's actually really, really, really cool. I've actually never done what I'm going to talk about, but I've learned a little bit about it, and I just want to throw that in there at the end of this. So if you are looking for a way to make bug-free software, stay tuned because I'm going to be talking about that. Okay, so what is next? The two types of tests. Well, there's unit tests and integration tests. So a unit test is designed to test a small unit. So this would be like one unit would be testing that inserting money into your bank account function and basically mocking or faking the bank. And all you got to do is write a unit test for all of the different edge cases. So you would have a unit test for 0, -1, 1, max number, and the number after the max number. And the reason the tests, you have so many little small tests is because if you think of the name, it's a unit. We are trying to test individual units of our software. So that way when we change things, we can basically just run this huge number of tests and verify that the software is working the way it's supposed to be working. So that is why the unit tests are very small, because we want to be able to easily test one small piece of functionality. And if a test breaks, the smaller the unit, the easier it is to figure out what's wrong. For example, if you tested every single thing inside of one giant unit test and then it failed, well, now you're going to have to debug this test and figure out what's going on, and it could be anywhere inside of that unit test. So if you make your unit tests smaller, they're easier to fix, they're easier to follow, and they test a more specific functionality. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. The other thing was integration tests. Now, integration tests, these are the things the people who pay money actually care about. We as software developers, we do unit tests, but should we do unit tests as much as we do integration tests? I don't know. Software developers will probably say, heck yeah, you should do more unit tests than you should do integration tests. And then, the people paying the actual money would say integration tests are more important. And essentially what an integration test is, it tests your entire system. So rather than faking that bank, it would actually test putting money into the bank, verifying that the bank took the money and that you can access the new amount of money. That is what an integration test is. It tests the bigger functionality of your app. So that means they're more complex, but they show what the application is supposed to do from a zoomed out perspective. The unit test is like zooming in into the cellular details of your test, whereas The integration test is like, oh, does my arm work? No, it doesn't. Okay, that means something's broken. So you can see the difference there. Unit tests, very small. Integration tests can be a little bit bigger, but you still want to try to keep them small, but they should test the functionality of something. You know, if you program, pretend an arm is a program. I know it's such a dumb illustration, but if you're programming all these units and everything's working, but can you use all of that as a whole to pick up some water, twist off the cap, and take a drink? Yeah, I was really just thirsty. I needed an excuse to get some water. Next thing I wanted to talk about is black box and white box testing, you know? So, all about that black box there, right? So what in the world is black box and white box testing? These are kind of dumb. Okay, I shouldn't say that because they're pretty important, I guess. But essentially, these are test cases that are often written in English to show, hey, is your program working? And the way companies do these varies. But I had to do it at one company that I was working for, and essentially you had to write up a Word document showing that your software does everything that it's supposed to do. And that included pictures and inputs and outputs, and then, you know, making sure, showing a picture that all the unit tests and integration tests passed. And it was, you know, it's good, except it took like forever. And, you know, if you write good enough unit tests and integration tests, you really shouldn't have to spend a whole lot of time turning that into a document. It's kind of just, I don't know, I kind of feel like some people just try to overdo it sometimes, which we should try not to do. So, what is the difference between white box and black box testing? Well, white box exposes the inside of your application. So these are the tests usually the developers are going to be doing. So these are making sure, hey, this function does what it's supposed to do. Hey, this does what it's supposed to do. The black box is a little bit more not see-through. So as an example, those are the kinds of tests once you put the application onto either a testing environment or a fake customer's computer, then you run these tests and make sure it works. And these are often, you know, the things going to be ran by the testing engineers or the testing people, because they don't necessarily know what your code is doing. All they really care about is this software doing what it's supposed to be doing? So that's black box testing. Okay, then there's some more categories of testing. So limitation testing. This is, you know, pushing the limits of your software. Does your software work when you're working with tons of data? You know, gigabytes of data, terabytes of data, more than that. Does it work if you have a slower computer? Does it work if the internet's slow? Does it work with more people? So if you have an app that's being used by multiple people, well, that goes into concurrency, with concurrency meaning the term multiple users of this application. There's also concurrency when it comes to asynchronicity, which we'll talk about in a minute. But concurrency meaning multiple people using your software at the same time. If you have 1,000 users, does it start to slow down? Does it break? If you have 1,000,000 users, if you have 10 million, whatever your limits, whatever you think the appropriate limit is, you need to test that. So that way you know that your software works in a production environment that might actually reach that point. So that's limitation testing, and along with that is performance testing. Performance testing is basically saying, is this fast? Yeah, this is fast. Okay, it passes. But there's more to it than that. Obviously, you can get software packages that can optimize the speed of your program, all that good stuff. But essentially what that is, hey, does this program work without consuming all of the memory and just making the computer super slow? Is this a good performing program? And then on top of that is scalability. Is this something that we could easily grow out to more customers without causing problems? That's really important because, you know, think of like Pokemon Go, right? They had this big issue because they were not prepared for the mass number of people that were going to be using their software. And when the app launched, 50% of the time it would just shut down or it wouldn't work because the scalability was underestimated. So now let's talk about concurrency in code. So that's different than when we're talking about users. So concurrency in code is dealing with parallel computing or parallel processes, multi-threading, asynchronous code, all of that kind of good stuff. So if you don't know what any of that is, that's okay, but essentially it's another layer of complexity to our software. So let's talk about some of the different things that is. Okay, so it's magic. I know that much. I don't really understand all of it, but essentially you can execute multiple things at the same time using parallel processing. So rather than processing something, waiting for it to finish, and then processing something else, waiting for it to finish, why not just process them both at the same time? And I saw this illustration of this kind of like doing laundry, and it was like 4 steps. You know, you have to throw the clothes in the washer, you have to throw the clothes in the dryer, you have to dry your clothes, take the clothes out, and then you have to fold the clothes or something like that. And if you just did that once, well, you'd have to wait for the whole thing to take the time that it does to get through to the end. But, you know, if while you put something in the dryer, you throw something in the washer, well, you can kind of do 2 things at once layered on top of each other. So you can speed up the process of your computer, your processing of your code. And how that works, I have no idea. I sort of had a class on it, and it was completely over my head. So it's about all I know. But I do know it can cause some problems, some serious problems with code. So if you have concurrency like that, like parallel processing, or multi-threading, which is essentially the same thing, so parallel processing with multi-threading, or if you're dealing with asynchronous code, which is stuff that happens in the background, you are highly likely to have bugs in your software. So one of the very common bugs that you get when you do this kind of stuff is deadlock. And it's pretty horrible. So what is deadlock? Essentially, deadlock is when one piece of your software is waiting on another piece to do something, and that piece is waiting on the other piece to do something. So your software just locks and doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't do anything, it just sits there. And why is that a big problem? Well, besides the fact that your stuff's broken and all your customers are going to be super upset, it doesn't happen all of the time. So it's an unpredictable problem. Meaning, if you find this bug and then you teach someone how to reproduce it, there's a high probability it's not going to happen because it's based on time. So deadlock only happens if 2 things happen in parallel and they're not lined up just right. So for example, let's say you have to lock 2 resources and you have essentially two processes, and each process needs to lock both of the resources. Well, there's resource A and resource B. Let's say number 1 grabs A and then number 2 grabs B, but they both still need the other one. So they just wait for the other one to release it, and now you got this problem because they're both holding one and they're both waiting on each other to release it. That's kind of a dumb example, but stuff similar to that. You can prevent that, but it has to do with locking and unlocking. So that is a huge thing in code, and you could make a whole series on that. So I'm not going to do that right now. Maybe later. But if you're doing that kind of stuff in your code, you need to be very, very careful that you are locking and unlocking at the appropriate times. Because if your locking section is too short, and essentially locking is saying, hey, I'm going to grab both of these, you can't touch them, back off, son. That kind of stuff. So when you lock, you don't risk that problem. But if your locking section is too big, you sacrifice the benefit of processing things in parallel, because then the other one has to wait for everything to finish and you defeat the whole purpose. If that makes any sense. So, deadlock. Big problem, big thing that's hard to test, and that's something to deal with. If you have experienced it, then you need to go back and make sure that you're locking everything appropriately. So we're up to 30 minutes, and I'm going through this pretty quickly, trying not to ramble too much. The next thing I wanted to talk about is reducing the need for testing. In other words, write better software. How do we write better software so we don't need to test it so much? We should still test it because obviously the software needs to do what it's supposed to do, but we don't want to have more testers than we have programmers, because, come on. The thing is, writing software is extremely hard. And I'm not just saying that because I'm awful at it. I'm saying that because it is. And I'm bad at it. But besides that, it's an extremely complex process that can be very difficult to get right. There's even books written on that. So I think there's one like Dreaming in Code or something, and that talks about all that. So with this live streaming software, there's this little box at the bottom, and it changes colors, and it goes from like green to red. So I apologize if this is a little choppy. I'm not going to be able to tell right now, but I'll have to go through, and if this internet's not going to work, I'm going to have to find somewhere else to do this because it's too much fun to quit. Too much fun. Ain't quitting this. Maybe. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so how do we reduce bugs? How do we make better software? Well, let's write a book about it, because there's 1,000 things we can do to make testing easier and to make software better. One of the very first things I would recommend is test-driven development, and that is where you write and think about your tests before you write the code. Once your tests are there, you can run them, and since you haven't programmed anything, it's going to fail. It's not going to work. And you're going to get probably like a red circle or a failed sign. And then what you do is you go implement the code needed to make that test pass, and no more. And then you write another test, and you just keep repeating that process. And why would you want to do this? Well, the reason is because if you write the test first, it forces you to think about what your software is really supposed to be doing. Because, like I mentioned in the last live stream, oftentimes we think we're supposed to be doing something. We program something than we're thinking, and the thing that the person actually wants is completely different. And the way they explain what they want is completely different. So actually getting the right product is very challenging. So doing the test first, you can actually run that by the boss or whoever and say, hey, does this stuff look right? And if they have any idea about the software testing, they can look through it and say, yeah, this looks good. And then you can code it, and then you're both on the same page. So that's pretty cool. So test-driven development, obviously, it doesn't work. Okay, so with that, the reality is you're probably going to, maybe I shouldn't say this, I don't know. You're probably going to be doing a little bit of both at the same time, because sometimes writing an entire test or a test suite, for example, without coding anything is challenging because you're not really sure what to test for, what the code's going to look like. But, 75 to 100% of your efforts should be writing the test, and the 25% should be thinking about, pseudocode, hey, what is our structure going to look like? And kind of build those out together. Yeah. So when you write code, you need to write good code. And one of the ways that I think you write good code is by following conventions. So a convention is just an agreed upon way of doing something. And there are tons of conventions in code and software suites and all that good stuff. But one of them that I am very, very particular about is naming conventions and capitalization conventions. Because if you get thrown in software that has a certain convention but someone's not following it, it's nearly impossible to follow what's going on because you look at something and you say, oh, it's a property, but really it's a field. And that's annoying. So let's talk about some of the conventions that I think are important. So, what is Pascal casing and Camel casing? These are two capitalization standards. Pascal casing is where if you have multiple words like, I can't think of anything, but each first letter is capitalized. So that is different than the other option, which is Camel casing, where all of the first letters of the words are capitalized except the first word is lowercase. And just that convention alone can tell you what the variable is. So I'm talking specifically programming. I'm not talking SQL or database programming. The naming conventions for a SQL database is something else. So let's talk about programming. For example, in C#, a property, it's just like a property on an object, is always capital. A field, which is just a variable essentially, is always camel case. And if you made it Pascal casing, your first thought is, oh, this is a property, but it's really not. So figure out what your capitalization standards are for whatever software you're writing or whatever programming language you're using, and you need to follow them religiously, as annoying as it might be. And sometimes it can get confusing when it comes to abbreviations. So like if you have like MVC in your code, for example, do you capitalize all of the letters? What if you are in camel casing? Do you lowercase the first M and then uppercase the V and the C? All that's kind of confusing, and usually the programming language will have some kind of documentation on what is recommended. But generally, if you have two letters, they'll both be capitalized. If you have three letters, the first one or all three of them, either the first one will be capital and then the rest lowercase, or all three of them will be lowercase, depending on if it's camel case or Pascal casing. So that's kind of confusing to explain without an illustration, but if your acronym is three letters, you should be thinking lowercase. Generally, that's going to vary, but uppercase, multiple characters in a row, uppercase is generally frowned upon unless it's something small like 2 characters. Okay. Whew, that's some... Man, I never thought I could get so detailed on writing variable names. But on the topic of abbreviations, you should just try to avoid them if you can. If you can't for some reason, or if it just makes sense, like if you're going to write ID, I mean, that's way better than identification number or identification. So obviously sometimes they're reasonable, but sometimes you'll read code and every single variable is just an abbreviation or some random letter. So it's like P.LJP parentheses A comma J, and then it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be able to read that somehow. Yeah, that's not happening. So even if it takes up more room, spell out your stinking variable names, because no one knows what you're talking about. And in a year, you're not going to know what you're talking about either. So I am generally very against abbreviations because they're stupid and there's way too many of them. If you look up any abbreviation on the internet, there's 40 potential possibilities. So if someone doesn't know what your abbreviation means, it's confusing. Simple as that. So if you're on a software team, you need to get some serious rules, rules, annoying things. Get in people's code and say, bro, why do I have a light bulb? I just got some really great ideas today. You need to get in people's code and be like, bro, this should be lowercase, this should be uppercase. What the heck is LJP mean? Spell it out. I don't care if your variable names get longer, it's worth it, because then you can read your code as if it's English. And that makes it easier for us all. Yeah, so that's that. You need to have some generalized company standards on how you write your code. That way, you know, all of your code is not only readable by one specific person. Other people in your industry and in your business and company, they can read it as well. So some software is out there that can actually force certain conventions. So like, I can't really think of any good ones, but there's something with Visual Studio like FX something. Essentially, it'll scan your code and be like, bro, you're breaking the rules. You're gonna get fired. Your boss is gonna kill you, and that'll help you keep your team all on the same page. So look into stuff like that if you really want to be picky. But generally, just tell everyone the rules and tell them to follow them. Yep. So one convention I have is like if I'm using an acronym and I have to use that acronym, but I'm using it in a variable that's Camel case, I will lowercase the first letter, even though it looks weird, because that way I know this is a variable, local variable, or field, or whatever I'm working with. The last thing that I have, wait, just kidding, I got a ton more, is code reviews. So a code review is once you commit stuff, or once you have your code ready, you can commit it to a branch, or just have it on your laptop, but usually you should commit it to some kind of repository. Have some boss dude or some other software engineer look at your code, slap you in the face, be like, noob, you don't know what you're doing. Then they whip out their DDS++ on RuneScape and take you to the Wildy and pwn you and send you to Lumbee. Yeah, that's a good thing. Okay, that's one of the perks of working in a team environment, is people sharpen you by cutting you and causing painful things to go through your body. Verbally, though, I'm not physically. I mean, if people are literally cutting you, you need to get out of that job, okay? When people say, hey, use cutting edge software, that is not what they mean at all. Okay, moving on. Sorry, I'm one of those guys who will be in like a class or whatever, and I'll say a joke, and everyone is like, and I'm just the only one laughing at my own joke. So yeah, get some code reviews. There's software out there that can help you with that, so you can type your code reviews. But sometimes people overdo it with all the software. Sometimes it's nice just to get in a room with a bunch of people who are super mean, and they say, hey, your code sucks, you shouldn't work here, and you need a demotion. But if you can fix this, hey, it might work. You know, that happens sometimes. But if you are in that position, you should really try to encourage people, not bring them down. Okay, the next biggest thing is automated testing. Obviously, we talked about that a little bit, but I think going into automated testing is super important, because the more things we can automate, the less things we have to do by hand. So even if you have 1,000 or a couple thousand or tens of thousands of little unit tests, if it saves you from hiring an entire team of testing engineers, it's worth it. It really is. And you can usually find software developers or software engineers that have a little bit more skill set and are able to do the testing, rather than hiring a designated test writer. And you might have to pay them a little bit more, but imagine paying a software engineer an extra $10,000 a year and saving yourself $60,000, $70,000 or whatever by not hiring a testing engineer. If you hire skilled developers, then you might actually save yourself some money by not needing as much staff. And yeah, there's always the argument like, oh, well, if you test, it takes away your time and blah, you can't code as much. But the reality is your test should be highly coherent with your code. So who is more suitable to write your test than the actual person who wrote the code? It might take a little bit more time, but when you go back and work on that code again, you're going to understand it at a much deeper level, because you wrote all these tests verifying that the software is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So you become intimately involved with that code base, and it becomes your baby. As weird as that is, I have experienced that. I wrote some software, and then I built a website, and they changed it, and it was like, right in the heart. You took my baby. So if you haven't experienced that, then you're probably not as intimately involved with the code as you should be. And I ain't saying no weird intimacy, man. I'm just saying get really familiar with the code, know it inside and out. Don't just get it working and then move on. Know why it works so that way you can fix problems that come up. So the next thing, this is a whole section. So honestly, I'm contemplating breaking this off into its own little live stream thingamajiggy. But hey, what the heck. I only got to get up at like 6 in the morning, so we got time. So continuous integration. This is pretty popular and it's pretty a big deal, so you need to learn about it. So there's 3 kind of steps, and I'm not really going to go into all the details of all of them, but there's continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. And they all are kind of, you know, the same thing if you think about it. They're continuous something, if I can generalize a little bit too much. And essentially what this stuff is designed to do is to make the delivery of your software much smoother, much faster, much bug-free. Because the problem that people are coming up with is that, you know, the software needs change so fast, and they change a ton of stuff on their local machine. They write this super awesome software on their laptop. They commit it to the repository. You know, they commit 472 files with 200 terabytes of lines. And then everyone else tries their software and it doesn't work. And you get the standard, oh, it works on my machine syndrome. And the problem with that is that people are not committing their code regularly enough, probably because they're using some crappy source control system like Subversion or Team Foundation Server. Apologies if you work for either of those companies, but I'm a huge fan of the distributed content management, the distributed source control management, like Git. So get some Git in your life, and then you will make your life better. So with that, you can basically set up some rules. You can make some either PowerShell scripts or some kind of scripts with some kind of fancy language. And essentially, when you make a commit to your repository, it's automatically going to deliver those changes to a testing environment or even to the customer's computer, which is pretty cool. But that's dangerous because then anyone could just commit whatever they wanted, and you know, there's going to be new software out there that does who knows what. So there's rules with it you can add. Specifically, you can tie this build process of getting your software out. You can tie it to tests, so you can back up your continuous delivery with tests. And what that means is, let's say you have 100 unit tests for your software, and you commit your changes to the repository without running your tests, because, you know, we always forget to do that kind of stuff. And then the process of this continuous delivery is going to pick up on that and say, hey, bro, your test failed, and it's going to stop there. It's not going to do anything with your code, and you're just going to have to make the changes until it works. Well, let's say your test pass. Well, then it's going to move that over into probably a testing environment where you can then do some more tests, like black box testing, for example. And then once that's approved, you can commit it even to the customer's machine, which seems kind of crazy, but it is a possibility. For example, there's software out there like Octopus Deploy, which is an example of this. You can basically put this little agent on all of anybody's machines that you want this software to go to, and you can push the updates automatically like that. This is often used for like internal stuff. If you want to update some software on everyone's machines, well, you can put this little piece of software on all the machines and send software out to all of those machines. So there's different ways of doing that and different views. Is that something you should even do, or is that just a really bad idea, or is it an awesome idea? That's all probably opinions, so feel free to have your own and look it up, and if you think it's cool, give it a try. If you don't think it's cool, then, you know, unsubscribe and never come to my channel ever again, because, you know, some people are sensitive and that's what they like to do. Not that I'm thinking of any people or anything, but that happens regularly, which is okay, whatever. If you don't like my content, that's okay. I'm not going to be horribly offended, just partially. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the software verification. And this is something that is really super cool. This is what I mentioned at the beginning of when it comes to creating bug-free software. This is kind of like magic. I don't know a thing about it, but I know it exists. So if you want to know more about it, look up this thing, COQ. Unfortunate spelling, but whatever. Look that up. It is a here, I'll look it up right now. I'll tell you what it is because I don't know what it is. It's basically a way to write these proofs to prove your software does what it's supposed to do. So the cock proof assistant, and that is basically a mathematical way to prove that your software does exactly what it's supposed to do. So with this, there are proven compilers, for example, that don't have any bugs, unlike some compilers which can have bugs actually. So this is really cool, but this is something that might be interesting if you are looking for some like serious top of the line software with no bugs. You might want to look into something like this. It is a process. It's very let's just say I went to a little session on it, and it was like up here in the knowledge, and I was like down here like, bruh, I'm just trying to be an HTML engineer. I have no idea what you're talking about. But there was pizza, so it was very motivating. So that's something you might want to look into, and that could be really super cool because if in theory you could replace unit testing with this proof testing, well then you could have less bugs and you wouldn't have to have as many testing engineers. So that's kind of sweet. Yep, that's all I really got on software testing. So at this point, I am going to start looking at some questions, but once again, I just wanted to interrupt with this interruption sponsored by Db2. This database, there will be videos coming out soon, so if you just jumped in this stream halfway through and you missed the beginning, what I told you is that I am going to be producing a Db2 series that's going to be a great start for those of you who don't have any database experience or who are looking for a database that can be used for multiple different things, because this database starts at a free version and can scale up to like super ginormous enterprise Fortune 100 company kind of stuff. So crazy cool database with all kinds of cool features that hopefully I will get to discuss in great detail. In addition to that, I'm hoping to have some blogs on it too, so there will be extra information. This is a series I'm going to put a lot of effort into because IBM is going out of their way to support my content, so that is why I'm going out of my way to make sure you guys know that they are there supporting my content. And not only that, but I actually really like their database. I'm not gonna sponsor someone whose product is really lame. That would be lame. Okay, so question and answer. Oh, let's go to that live dashboard, see what we got. Hey, Caleb. Hey, Scott, what's up? Hi, dude. Back at you, man. Wow. Your vids about RDB stuff was dope. Awesome, man. Okay, there's literally no questions. Come on, guys. What am I here for if I'm not here to answer any questions? I'm just going to blabber to a camera all day? You should really invest in a new mic, Caleb. The one you are using currently is clipping occasionally and is very jarring when it happens. Yes. Yes, I agree. This... Oh, gosh. Oh, this stream is turd. Okay. So yes, my microphone is pretty crappy. My internet is pretty crappy. That is on the to-do list. I am going to work on that, but it is a process because it takes a lot of time to figure all that stuff out, and figuring out a place where I can actually do some streams rather than in this bar. Hey, this is great. You should do more of this. You betcha. Can I still watch the podcast later? Yes, these are automatically published to my YouTubes. So all them peeps from the inner tubes, you can check out this stuff later if you have to work, or if you have a life, or if you just don't feel like watching me blabber right now, that's fine. I would encourage you, just play it in the background, listen to it, and yeah, great stuff, hopefully. Hopefully you can learn. I'm trying to make it very conversational. That's why I'm not giving a bunch of pictures and confusing charts and stuff, because essentially I want this to be something where you can listen to it, learn some stuff, and apply it. I'm not teaching you how to configure a database engine right now. That's not the goal of this stream. Okay, so literally I got like no questions except the one about watching this stream, which isn't really that helpful. So I have some questions that people asked previously that I haven't really gotten to. So I'm going to continually try to find new questions that people have asked that I've basically ignored because I have hundreds of them. So the first one, and I'm generalizing what they say, but hey Caleb, questions. Currently in college doing a project involving asking questions of what it's like to be in a computer programming community. Well, if you want to know what it's like to be in a computer programming community, I suggest you check out like a meetups.com or meetup.com or whatever it is, and look for meetups in your local area, because you can actually find communities on all kinds of different stuff, and that could be a really good way for you to actually experience that. Or if that is not reasonable, if you don't live around communities, you can join live streams like this, or find some kind of community online where you can communicate with others. So hopefully that helps you figure that out. You have to ask questions of what it's like to be in a computer programming community. It's kind of confusing because I feel like a teacher would actually encourage you to find a computer programming community and become a part of it, but maybe I'm not understanding the question right, and you're actually asking something like what it means to be in computer programming. And if that is what you're asking, I recommend you watch yesterday's live stream, which was about computer science. Sorry, my nose is itching and I'm all like, bleh, picking my nose. But I will try to refrain myself. Happy New Year! Oh, by that last question, that was from Steven. The next one is Sayuri. Watched your video on YouTube, Oracle, SQL, MySQL. Learned some database design. Wanted to review it more in depth. Which database do you think will benefit me most? Thank you in advance. Your new fan, Sayuri. Okay, so the reality is that all relational databases are built off of a standard SQL, structured query language. It's a standard, which means if you learn one, you can transfer a lot of that information to another one. So which one will benefit you most? I don't know if there is an exact answer. It really depends on what you're trying to do, what kind of job you're trying to get, what kind of stack you're working in. So if you're working in like the Microsoft stack, a lot of those kinds of jobs are going to expect SQL Server. But if you're working in a Java stack, you might expect MySQL, Oracle, or whatever. If you're going into enterprise programming, so you might then be dealing with Oracle or DB2. With this new DB2 series I'll be producing, I would highly recommend looking into that. That link here down on the screen is actually where you can go to learn more about that and give it a download for free. So that would be great to get started to prepare for the series that will be coming up in the next few weeks. So that would be a good start, because I'm going to go in a lot of depth on what a database is, what it means to be a relational database versus a non-structured or an unstructured database, or actually DB2 supports both, so I'll be talking about that in my blogs. So it's going to be a little bit more tasty than my other series that I've done, where I just kind of scratch the bare minimum. This one is going to scratch that minimum, but also scratch a little deeper and really teach you some of the structural importances of designing a database and also how to apply that to a DB2 database, which is phenomenal. So hopefully that answers your question. If you are completely new, I would recommend finding a free database. So DB2 works great, but there's all kinds of free ones out there if you think a different one would suit your needs a little better. Okay, Nemanji. Hi, help me with MySQL stored procedures. I have no idea how to do that. Well, fortunately for you, I have a series on that. So let's try to show you how to find that. Okay, gonna switch to my fancy screen. Give me just a sec. Okay, gotta go to my YouTube channel. There it is. Would you look at that? Okay, if you go on here, go to the videos tab, playlist tab. You can find all my tasty playlists. PHP and DreamHost. We'll talk about that in a little bit. What DreamHost is, DB2 database clustering. Well, you can go in here and click View 18 More. Find all kinds of cool stuff on here. So the one you were looking for was MySQL stored procedures. So boom, right there you go. You got 10 videos on MySQL stored procedures. Hopefully that's just what you're looking for. It kind of just scratches the surface on some of the syntax and the things you're going to need to know. All right, so that's that for that question. Okay, the next question. Hi, I just have one question. If I finish my web design using front page, how can I publish or upload it as a real website? Please, I need an answer. Thank you. Mary. The person's name was Mary. They weren't thanking Mary because my name is not Mary. So how do you actually make your website a website? Well, honestly, I don't know what front page is, but if it's any more complicated than what I'm going to explain, then you should probably use something else to make your website. If you have HTML, CSS, that is what you need for a website front end. And that needs to be hosted, or you can self-host it, but I would highly advise against it for security issues. But you need to host that somewhere that is able to deliver those websites. So the hosting provider that I suggest is DreamHost. So let me share that link with you guys. I will paste that in the live stream. It is, so you guys can hear me say it. Let me find it, goodness. ctvm2, bit.ly/ctvm2 DreamHost. I will paste that in the comments right here. And I will even show you a little bit what DreamHost looks like so you're not completely unfamiliar. Let me just load it up for you guys. Okay, I'll show you a couple cool things that you'll need to know if you're going to upload a website. Okay, let me switch over to my screen here. If I can figure it out. Okay, there we go. So the very first thing is, ignore that for a second. Let's focus on this DreamHost. So this is the DreamHost dashboard, and you can go in here and see all your domains. And a domain will be actually associated with your files, so you're going to need to store your files in a folder by that domain. And then when you just go to that domain, it'll show your files. So if you go to calebcurry.com, well, this is actually processing basically index.php, but if you're using HTML, it'll work just the same way. So you might have something like /index.html, for example. Yeah. So DreamHost is really good because they offer you support and they have really super good hosting. For example, if you're doing something with WordPress, DreamPress is like your heaven essentially for web hosting. So DreamHost is what I would highly recommend for if you're trying to set up a simple website. But there's also some other content management systems, the one-click installs over here. And in here, you can actually basically install all of these things super easy. So for example, I came in here, I published a Joomla website, it was done. Simple as that. Once you have your domain, you can buy a domain from DreamHost, or if you own it somewhere else, such as GoDaddy, you can transfer it or change the pointings of your website so it can still work on GoDaddy. But once you got that, you're going to get a file transfer protocol program such as FileZilla. And this will allow you to connect to essentially this computer, whatever is hosting your website. So whatever computer is hosting this website, I can connect to that and change my files around. So once you have your files on your computer, your HTML and your CSS, you're going to go in here with your host. That's going to be your website name. You're going to pass in your username and password for your FTP user, and then you're going to connect. Once you're connected, you can literally just drag your files over to your server and then refresh the page. Hopefully it gets it. Hopefully it works. You will want to make sure that you have an index.php, index.html, home.html, something like that, because that is the one that's going to be automatically rendered when you go to your web address like this. If you do something like home, like cool homepage or something, you're actually going to have to type that in like this, which is not what you want for your homepage because it's more complex. So you don't want to do that. So yeah, that's file transfer protocol. That's like the bare minimum basics. But if you do sign up with DreamHost, there is a referral link that I have that I posted in the chat. And you sign up, you actually get some benefits if you sign people up. So I'm not just suggesting DreamHost to make money. I'm suggesting it because this is what I've been using for the last forever. And they have been one of the best web hosting experiences that I've ever used. I did try a different web host. I've used GoDaddy. I didn't use GoDaddy for web hosting, but I used it to buy a domain, and I hated it. I actually transferred my ownership of my domain to DreamHost, and that just makes it all a lot easier. But the cool thing is you can actually go over here and down here in support. You can find all kinds of support stuff, obviously, so you can contact support and go in here. Hopefully it doesn't spill out any important information. But on here you can ask questions, and you can even, so like let's say, hey, I'm having a problem with my website. Well, you can chat with an agent live if it's urgent, or you can submit a ticket and they have like a 24-hour response time. They go over, above, and beyond what I would expect for support. So if you're having a problem setting up a website, they'll literally help guide you through it. So that's pretty awesome. It kind of brings you into the more advanced web development kind of stuff, but you don't necessarily have to be an expert because you have a support team right there waiting to help you. So hopefully that kind of gives you a rundown. Yeah, so that is what I would recommend. The most important thing is to get your HTML and CSS files onto your shared hosting or dedicated hosting provider. So DreamHost offers both. There's a difference between shared hosting is where multiple websites is ran from the same server, or you can buy a dedicated server if you're getting like tons of views. If you do go for something with DreamHost, I would highly recommend just starting with shared hosting unless you know your website's going to do really well. So shared hosting, I do recommend getting it for a year because one, I think it's cheaper on DreamHost. I think it's cheaper for you to sign up for a year, and you don't have to worry about renewing it every month. And the bonus that I receive is much higher if you sign up for a year. In fact, I almost get everything you pay for the first year of hosting. So you can almost think of it as a way to support this content is by signing up for a year. You have the website for a year, and I even have over on my channel. If you go to my channel, go to my playlist. Well, that's what I was talking about earlier. I have a series on here somewhere, PHP, MySQL in DreamHost. So if that's something you want to set up a simple website with PHP, it's really super easy to do. I talk about grabbing data from a database and displaying it in a web page hosted with DreamHost. So that'll kind of give you your overall guide on how to do everything and get started. That'll cover FTP, all that good stuff. Okay, so that's all I got for the questions right now. I'll look at the stream and see if you guys got anything else. Let me go back to me. See if you guys got any questions. It doesn't look like you guys got any questions, so I think I'm going to end it there. Before I go, I did just want to talk about a little bit about what's coming up. Expect the database clustering videos to be coming out really swift, very quick, because I'm going to crank those out of the way, and that way you guys got the full series available to you. That'll get you started with database clustering. There are some things that I've wanted to share with you, some videos that are out there that I'm featured in. So I am going to probably start sharing those with you guys either probably in the next live stream or in an upcoming one. So I'm going to try to use this as a medium for me just to keep you guys updated on what's going on. I'm trying to run a more open business here, so what I mean by that is I'm going to talk to you guys about the processes I'm going through, the challenges of making the videos, and the kind of content I get produced. So if you are interested in more of that kind of stuff, please leave a comment on this stream. Okay, some guy actually asked, someone asked a question. Sebastian, which software do you use for testing code? Well, this is usually software. The software you use is usually programming language dependent. So the testing software you use for C# might be different than the testing software you use for Java. There is probably some universal testing software out there, but if we're talking like C#, there's testing frameworks such as NUnit, XUnit, and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of different options, and I don't have a recommended, hey, this is the software suite you need to get. So hopefully that answers your question. And yeah, guys, I am really, really excited. Yeah, so one of the people commented about my horrible microphone. I understand that it's not the best, and I think even today some of the stream kicked out, which is a problem. So if you guys like this content, I am going to be thinking of ways to improve that. Hopefully by the end of the year, we can have some really sweet live streams with co-hosts or special guests, and even some stuff that I'm really, really excited about that I've been thinking about for a while. So one of the things with running a tutorial channel is, this stuff is so... It's pieced to where it's a tutorial, but it doesn't necessarily teach you all of the stuff. So I want to do something where I am kind of doing tutorials still, but at a more production level. So what I mean by that is almost like we're pair programming, but there's multiple of you guys, and you guys are just watching me program, I guess. But rather than, me planning, hey, this is exactly what I want to do in this video, I'm just going to come up with some software that I want to build, and we are going to build that together from start to end. And it just sounds so awesome! Because I have some sweet apps that I want to build for this channel, for my business. So why not make an open source project that I can have you guys, the community, contribute to, and we can actually go through all of the processes of programming an application, a good application with, all that testing stuff I'm talking about, unit test, continuous integration with build servers, all of that. So you can get the start to end experience of building that application. And what you could do is you could even do the same kind of thing with an app for yourself and use that as a resume piece. You can use that to build your resume, because you can say, hey, I have this application that I built, and this uses a Db2 database, and it's hosted in the cloud. Here's how I configured the connection to the database. Here's how I use a source control. So show like, hey, we're using a Git source control, and we're using continuous integration. So if I make this change on this branch and then refresh the website or whatever we're working on, you can see those changes immediately. And you can tie those tests to that to see if your software is working the way it's supposed to work. It's really nice to, make tutorials on all those little pieces, like, oh, how to set up continuous integration, but it doesn't really give the full picture, and it doesn't necessarily mean you know how to program or anything like that. So with that, there's going to be some challenges because I need to figure out how in the world do I make good open source software and show the whole process when I'm using stuff that is not supposed to be shared. For example, if I'm using an API key, that's something you generally don't just hand out to the entire world, because then people can do stuff with your account and blah, 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 blah. You don't want to do that. So I'm thinking of how in the world am I going to do this? And there's also going to be some level of openness with this, because I'm going to come up with issues, not intentionally, but I'm going to do bug tracking, and I'm going to find bugs, because every software is going to have bugs, and then I'm going to try to debug them, and you're going to see the whole process. But the challenge for me is, this is new to me as well. Like, I've done some of this stuff, and I'm sure some of you guys have worked with some of the stuff I'm mentioning, but building, an entire platform from beginning to end, all open source with community contributions, bug-free using testing, continuous integration, hosting in the cloud or whatever we're hosting it on, all of that for a really big, good software application is actually a very challenging task. So I'm trying to figure out ways that I can do that without, spending a 3-4 hour session debugging something. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to figure out the balance of, hey, how much of this do I want to record and how much of this am I just going to show? I'm leaning towards more, by show I just mean like, oh, here I fixed this bug, here's how I did it. I'm leaning more towards showing you the whole process, like, hey, let's fix this bug together, leave some comments if you guys have any suggestions. But the challenge of that is I may or may not be able to fix the bug, and I will probably make myself look like a total idiot in front of hundreds of people over the course of the video's lifespan, which I'm totally cool with. I make myself look like an idiot all the day long. I'm actually really good at it. Yeah, something I said in just last night's stream, someone was like, bro, dude, that doesn't even make sense. Because someone asked me, like, oh, what's my favorite pastimes, right? And, being analytical and super intelligent like I am, I was like, pastimes. Okay, so these are the things that you've spent your time on in the past, right? So, times of the past. But no, English doesn't work that way. Pastimes are your hobbies. How have I not known that? I've lived 20,000 months. No, wait, no. How long am I? 20,000. I don't know why I picked 20,000. Basically, I've lived a long time, and I didn't know that. See, that's proof, and I'm just showing you that I'm totally cool with looking like an idiot, because you're all probably thinking, wow, this guy's an idiot. So yeah, I'm blabbering now, but that's kind of fun because this is fun. I'm enjoying it. But in the next 6 months, hopefully we can upgrade the potato mic and the potato cam, set up a studio, get some sweet HD cams, and show the whole process from beginning to end of developing an application. That's what I want to do. I am thinking if there's some other stuff that I'd like to share with you guys before I go. Let's talk about... Oh, I gotta stop itching my nose. Okay, let's talk about analytics and some website stuff. So I've been working on my website some and getting some more blogs up there because I'm trying to grow that platform. YouTube is a platform, but my website is my own platform, so it's kind of higher value in a sense, and it can be monetized in more creative ways. So that is why I'm really pushing the website development. It's a new way for me to reach an audience, and it's not in contrast to my YouTube channel. It's actually a supplement to my YouTube channel. So by building my website, I'm not taking away from my YouTube channel. I'm actually helping my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel helps my website. I'm already creating all this content on YouTube. I might as well take a couple extra minutes, put it on my website to grow that as well. I do want to talk about monetization with websites and how to do that, because that's something I'm learning as well, because I've really neglected the website over these years just because I like making videos and I don't really like writing blogs that much, but I can deal with it. But one of the most important things is page views and also unique visitors. How many pages does a unique visitor view? And those are the kind of numbers that you can calculate to decide when you can start really monetizing on a website. More than enough research shows that if you are reaching 100,000 page views per month, you should be able to make a full-time income off of your website. Well, I'm almost there. I am about 2,000 page views a month, so I just got a couple thousand more to go, and I will be integrating new content and new ways of sharing cool stuff with you guys, specifically software systems that are out there for people to sponsor me. So for example, not only will I have these live streams and these videos as a sponsorship medium, but I will be able to share that stuff on my website to thousands of people. So obviously that's something I'm interested in, and I think most of you guys should be interested in that kind of stuff too, because it's not all about programming. It's about, how do I make a living doing something I love? Well, I love doing this YouTube stuff. I love doing the content creation. I love making myself look like a total idiot in front of hundreds of thousands of people. There's something just thrilling about it. You know, I can go find a programming job and I enjoy it, but this is what I really enjoy doing. So when it comes to web content, we are going to be talking about why you should write a blog, why you should figure out ways to monetize that blog, and how to monetize, and also just how to get new traffic, how to build your resume. Blogs are a huge resume bonus kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I got for the upcoming streams, and that is all I got for you guys today. So enjoy your night, and hopefully we'll be doing this tomorrow or really soon. So thanks guys, and peace out. Now I gotta stop this stream. Oh, come on, seriously?